We like to think money is neutral, that it's simply a tool, a means to get what we want. But history tells a different story. Money has never been just about buying goods or building wealth. At its core, it has always been power, political power. From the courts of Europe to the streets of modern capitals, the accumulation and control of money has shaped who rules, who resists, and who falls. Understanding this story isn't just academic. It reveals how the systems around us are designed and how they influence our lives in ways most people never notice. Let's start by looking at one of the earliest and clearest examples: Renaissance Italy. City-states like Florence and Venice weren't controlled by kings, but by powerful banking families. The Medici family in Florence is the most famous. Through banking, loans, and clever financial deals, they weren't just wealthy. They controlled who could rule, who could rise in the church, and even what art would be created. Their money wasn't just a number on paper, it was the ability to influence politics, culture, and law. Florence became a hub of art, science, and philosophy, and all of it ran on money that doubled as power. The pattern repeats itself in England during the 17th century. When the English Civil War broke out, money was as critical as armies. Parliament, seeking to challenge King Charles I, relied on wealthy merchants, bankers, and even joint stock companies to fund their cause. Without the support of these financial backers, the war could have gone entirely differently. Here, money wasn't just wealth to spend, it was the fuel of political ambition. Those who controlled capital could shape the fate of a nation. Fast forward to the 18th century, and we see a striking example in colonial America. The British Crown controlled the colonies largely through fiscal means: taxes, trade restrictions, and the issuance of currency. The anger over these controls wasn't abstract, it was a fight against money wielded as power. When colonists refused to pay taxes or circumvented trade rules, they weren't just challenging policy, they were challenging who held the ultimate influence over their lives. The revolution itself was in part a struggle over financial control. Money dictated not only commerce, but who had a voice in society. Even in modern times, the story hasn't changed. Consider 20th century Europe. After World War I, Germany's government printed money recklessly to cover debts and reparations. On the surface, it looked like a solution, but the result was hyperinflation. By 1923, people were carrying wheelbarrows full of currency just to buy bread. What happened wasn't just an economic collapse, it was a transfer of power. Those who could access real assets, hold foreign currency, or control production retained influence. Those tied solely to paper money lost their voice, their agency, and in many cases, their lives. Money became not just fragile wealth, but the line between political survival and helplessness. You might wonder, is this still relevant today? Absolutely. Modern governments and corporations still understand that controlling money means controlling power. Central banks decide interest rates, governments issue bonds, and policies influence who gains and who loses. Consider lobbying in contemporary politics. Corporations, wealthy individuals, and unions use financial resources to sway legislation, elections, and regulations. The principle is unchanged. Those who control money wield influence far beyond their wealth alone. Money is leverage. Money is power. Take another example from the corporate world. Large tech companies have financial reserves that rival the GDPs of some countries. That money allows them to shape policy, influence regulations, and even affect global standards for technology and communication. They can fund campaigns, hire lobbyists, and shape public debate. Again, it's not the raw wealth that matters most, it's the ability to translate it into influence over decisions that affect millions. Even on a personal scale, money can grant political power in subtle ways. Consider property ownership in developing nations. Landowners often have disproportionate influence in local governance. Control a resource that everyone depends on, and you can sway policies, elections, and social norms. History and current events repeatedly show the same lesson. Where money flows, power follows. Returning to a historical lens, let's look at France on the eve of the Revolution. The monarchy and aristocracy lived in opulence, funded by taxes extracted from peasants and middle-class citizens. The nobles weren't just rich, they held disproportionate sway in decision-making. When financial crises hit and the state teetered on bankruptcy, the very holders of capital shaped which reforms were possible and which were blocked. Money determined who could act, who could resist, and who could push change. The revolution itself was partly a backlash against the concentration of both wealth and political power in the hands of a few. Businesses invest, consumers borrow, and asset prices rise. But when confidence disappears, when borrowers can't repay loans or markets begin to fall, credit contracts rapidly. The same system that fueled expansion can suddenly amplify collapse. That's why banking crises have been a recurring feature of economic history. From the banking panics of the 19th century, the connection between money and power is also evident in the rise of colonial empires. Britain, France, and the Netherlands expanded overseas not merely to acquire resources, but to gain financial leverage that could translate into political dominance back home. Trade monopolies, joint stock companies, and colonial taxes created networks of influence that gave financial elites control over national policy. Money was never passive. It was a tool of governance, war, and diplomacy. So, what does this mean for us today? First, it means the systems we operate in are not neutral. The accumulation of money always carries influence, whether in elections, corporate governance, or social standing. Second, it means that if you understand money's political dimension, you can use it not just to survive, but to protect your autonomy. Diversifying wealth into tangible assets, investing in skills, and understanding financial levers is as much about personal agency as it is about financial security. But here's the cautionary part. Relying solely on abstract wealth, stocks, digital currency, or speculative assets, without understanding how money shapes decisions around you can leave you exposed. Political influence, policy shifts, and market manipulations can render nominal wealth powerless. Those who understand the connection between money and power and act accordingly retain resilience in crises. Those who don't are often caught unaware. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Banks, governments, and wealthy investors had resources that allowed them to influence bailouts and policy responses. Ordinary homeowners and small business owners, despite having nominal wealth in property or savings, had little say. Again, the gap between money and real power became painfully visible. It's not simply about how much you have, it's about what your money allows you to do. History gives countless lessons. From Florence to London, from Versailles to modern Washington, D.C., money has always been political. Whether funding wars, influencing elections, or shaping policy, those with capital have held a disproportionate voice. And this is why understanding the connection between finance and influence is critical for anyone who wants to navigate the modern world wisely. So if you want to survive and thrive, think beyond numbers on a bank statement. Recognize that money is power, and power can shape laws, policies, and opportunities around you. Invest in skills, assets, and knowledge that give you agency. Diversify your financial and social influence. And always remember, those who control money often control the rules of the game. Understanding this is the first step toward ensuring your wealth protects you, rather than leaving you exposed. History shows the stakes clearly. Florence's bankers, Rome's landowners, colonial empires, and modern corporations all demonstrate the same principle. Money isn't just currency, it's a mechanism of control. Recognize it and you gain foresight. Ignore it and history can sweep over you. If this helped you see the link between money and power more clearly, hit subscribe. There's more to learn about how history and finance intersect, and I'll show you how to use that knowledge to protect your freedom and your future.